Hi, everybody. My name is Dan Silva. Today at Vocation Plus, we're going to remember Memorial Day. Those who have served our country, those who have done a lot to make sure that we have a good nation and a good, safe place to live. Behind me, we're here in Fowler, California. There's a memorial area here on the corner of Merced and Adams. And my brother was actually in the military. He was a Marine, served for 3 years, infantryman. Then he moved over to the Air Force, and where he was an engineer working on airplanes just to make sure they're flying safe. He's gone overseas and making sure that he's been tested to make sure he actually knows what he's doing. I'm very proud of my brother. He did very well. He made it a career, so he's been enlisted since then, right out of high school, basically. And for those who have also served, we have Courtney Nixon. Her mom was in the Air Force, and she's here right now in that picture, as you see on the screen. And she has done a lot for our country, too. We appreciate it from Vocation Plus, those who have served, those who are still serving, and those who have passed away. We honor you. Thank you very much.
So my great uncle Lester retired as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He was also appointed by Governor Jerry Brown in the 70s to oversee a state agency and help start the African American Studies program at Fresno State. Both my grandpa Chester and my great uncle Lester were drafted into World War II. They were athletic stars at Edison High School and then continued their athletic starism in Fresno City College, and then they went into the war. After World War II, my grandpa became one of the first African Americans to work at Fresno's post office. He then became Reverend Chester Riggins and preached at St. Rest Baptist Church for over 44 years. Due to his contributions to the community, he has a street named after him in Fresno. My fiance, Oscar, served in the Army's National Guard for over 7 years. His title was a specialist in infantry. While in the National Guard, he went on deployment to Poland for close to a year, and I was lucky enough to go visit him over the summer. My Uncle Noel was in the Navy, and this paragraph is what he wrote. So he said, "Joining the military was one of the best decisions I have ever made. Not only did it give me the opportunity to see the world, it also gave me a chance to experience new and wonderful cultures. I have the great pleasure of participating in ancient ritual sailors all over the world have taken part in. When my ship reached the equator in the Pacific Ocean, like many sailors before me, swam across the equator."
Hi, my name's Aaron, and I just miss my dad. If my dad were around, he would have meet all the job coaches that I've had, especially the last one, and my case manager. And I miss you a lot. My dad was in the United States Army, and from 69 to 73, and he had gotten that bugle in the Vietnam, and there's a story about that bugle. Thank you.
Very good. Good morning, Ann. How are you?
Good morning, Dan. I'm doing good.
All right.
My dad was an Air Force pilot, and he was in for over 30 years. So I'm considered an Air Force brat. I've been all over the United States, born in Georgia, and then we settled here because this is where both my parents' families were. They were from here. Went to the Vietnam. He was in the Vietnam War, and thank God he came back. He also taught German Air Force students. He taught them to pilot. He was a teacher that for a while. They even let him finish schooling as an engineer. He got a degree of engineering. And then when he retired, like I said, we came here to retire. He was a colonel in the Air Force. And he always told me that he wanted to retire then because when you become a general, they move you a lot, and he still had a fairly young family. So, I thought we moved a lot. Anyway, he was a fighter pilot in Vietnam. Went over for the scary parts, for fighting for 9 months, and then he came back home, and then and that was in the 60s, and then he went back after the war was over. All I know is to help with kind of like the settling of everything. My dad received, when they started the honor flights, I think they've been going on for a few years now, and they have big sponsors. Paul Leffler is a top sponsor of this, and somehow someone, I don't know how you get the letters, but my dad got a letter saying, they wanted him to sign up to do, he was eligible or something to go on an honor flight. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. What they do is they fly them out. They have to have a sponsor, kind of a chaperone, sort of. They fly them from Fresno to Washington, D.C., and it's a fast 2 days, doing all the sites, all the Capitol. They go inside the Capitol building. They go visit Arlington. It's not just Air Force. It's all military branches. We got lots of pictures. So the neatest thing that came out of that is my dad was chosen, out of all the vets that were there, two were chosen to go lay the wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. And my dad was one of them. So that was really cool.
You're proud of him, aren't you?
I'm very proud of him. That's awesome. And then when we came home, and there's a big old, if you ever watch the TV news, it'll be on the news when they come home. It'll be all over the news. They have a big fanfare when they come in at the Fresno airport. Big Fresno airport, big fanfare. So when we were at a gathering, my dad met another veteran. He didn't know him. He just met this veteran. It wasn't also Air Force, and they just started talking. And he was part of one of the veterans groups, and he wanted my dad to come speak to them. So he did that too. And then the Bulldogs, Paul Leffler had him interviewed at a Bulldogs game, a basketball game. He was honored at halftime with a couple cheerleaders there on the floor of the game. It's very cool, and he's going to be 95 years old. Thank you very much. And remember this Memorial Day, remember all the veterans who gave their all and gave their life for this country to make it free.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm a job coach at Vocation Plus, and I want to share a little bit about my granddad, Leroy Ward. He is my mom's dad, and this is actually his brother's flag. They both served, and when my granddaddy passed, my aunt has my granddad's flag, and this is my Uncle Charles's flag. And there's actually a pin in here that says World War II veteran, and it has the stripes on there. So at our house, we get to have Uncle Charles's flag, and my aunt has my granddad's flag. I shared a picture with Jade that they can put up on the screen, and it's actually a picture of my grandparents, my aunt, and my mom. They were in Africa leaving for the U.S. at this point. This picture is from after the war, but my granddad had continued as a bush pilot in West Africa and a radio operator. So he did continue to fly aircraft. So a little bit about my granddad Ward is that he was in the Army Air Corps before it split into Army and Air Force. So at that time in World War II, there was not an Air Force yet. So he was a pilot, but he was considered Army Air Corps. And he was called up for duty on the day that Pearl Harbor was bombed. So he went into active duty on the day Pearl Harbor was bombed, and he served until the very end of World War II. And then when he retired, he became a bush pilot and served in West Africa. My mom was actually born in Liberia and raised in West Africa until she came to the States at 18. We don't really have pictures from his time in the service because he was very frugal, and there were only a few pictures, and the ones that we had were damaged. But my aunt inherited his wallet when my granddaddy passed. And when I was asking her if she had any pictures, she checked his wallet, and all the documentation from his communications license and just all these documents, the official, legit Army government documents were in his wallet until he passed away at 95 years old. He was very proud to serve his country. And so these documents were from, I think 1942, one of them says on it. But he passed about 10 years ago, and he kept these documents in his wallet every day of his life. So that was pretty interesting, I thought. But he was very proud to serve his country. My aunt shared a little story that he had to wait alone for a month with a plane stuck in the mud in Sicily. He survived on roasted almonds, and the locals were nice to him. He actually had someone trade a flight with him that he was supposed to be on, and they traded, and that plane went down, killing everyone on board. And he felt that God had spared his life in that instance. And so he had a pretty amazing life. And I loved hearing him tell stories, but it was kind of before the time of cell phones where we could record everybody. So unfortunately, I don't have details, but I can kind of hear his voice in my head, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty special. So that's a little bit about my granddad, Leroy Ward, from World War II. All right. Thanks for letting me share.
Hello, May is Military Appreciation Month. We want to honor and thank those who have fought and served for our country to ensure we have the freedoms we have now. In this video, I will discuss the main military branches, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance and National Anthem, and we'll hear personal stories from our persons served and staff who have relation to the military. The 7 main branches of the military are the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, the Coast Guard, and the National Guard. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Army is the largest and oldest in the U.S. military. The Army is composed of soldiers who conduct combat missions on the ground. The Marine Corps is composed of Marines. Their duty is to support the other branches in land, sea, and air combat and operations. The Navy is comprised of sailors who protect all the waterways and provide runways for aircrafts when at sea. The Air Force is able to provide rapid and flexible capability to anywhere in the world within hours. The Air Force is comprised of airmen who execute military operations in the air. The Space Force is comprised of guardians who organize, train, and equip members to conduct global space operations. The Coast Guard is comprised of Coast Guardsmen who enforce laws at sea, secure waterways, land search, and rescue missions. Lastly, the National Guard is a versatile force which supports both Army and Air. They support combat missions, domestic emergencies, humanitarian efforts, homeland security, and more. This Memorial Day, we thank all those who have served, fought, and lost their lives for our country. I will leave you with a quote. These fallen heroes represent the character of a nation who has a long history of patriotism and honor, and a nation who has fought many battles to keep our country free from threats of terror. Michael N. Castle.